What if the mortgage you thought was your ticket to financial flexibility becomes the weight that drags down your golden years? You spent decades chasing that dream house, refinanced into what felt like the perfect rate, and convinced yourself that a small monthly payment in retirement was a smart move. After all, why tie up all your cash in bricks when borrowing costs so little? But there's a hidden side to carrying debt past your payoff date and into your fixed income years. Every dollar locked into home equity is money you can't deploy into opportunities that might earn more than your mortgage interest. When markets wobble, having a forced monthly payment can turn a bear market into a crisis, as retirees reluctantly tap volatile accounts to cover those housing bills. Meanwhile, property taxes and insurance premiums keep creeping up, inflating your housing costs without warning, and leaving you scrambling for cash when unexpected repairs strike. You may have clung to that mortgage interest deduction, thinking it shields you from Uncle Sam, but in today's world of larger standard deductions, lower rates, and complex tax brackets, that benefit often evaporates entirely. And beyond the numbers, there's a psychological toll. Sleep interrupted by worry over payments, postponed travel plans, and the nagging thought that you're never truly free until those last loan statements hit zero. In this video, we're peeling back the curtain on 6 surprising reasons why retiring with a mortgage can cost you far more than you bargained for, and showing you how paying down that debt, even at the cost of temporarily deferring investments, could unlock a level of financial peace you never knew you were missing. Stick around, because the biggest mistake many retirees make isn't running out of money, it's carrying someone else's loan into the best years of their life. Every dollar you channel toward mortgage principal is a dollar unavailable for more lucrative opportunities, and that opportunity cost can quietly erode your nest egg faster than you realize. Imagine sitting on $200,000 of home equity while your mortgage rate sits at 3%. On paper, that low rate feels harmless, but if you had redirected even half of that equity, $100,000, into a short-term bond ladder or high-grade municipal bonds yielding 5%, you could be pocketing an extra $2,000 a year in income rather than paying a bank thousands in interest. Over a decade, that difference compounds, potentially adding tens of thousands to your retirement coffers. And the math gets even more dramatic when you consider balanced portfolios or dividend-paying stocks, which historically have delivered 6 to 8% total returns. Savvy retirees, we've talked to lament tying up more equity than necessary, noting that every mortgage payment is an unintentional forced savings plan at a rate that often underperforms nearly every conservative investment alternative. The real kicker is volatility. While market swings can be nerve-wracking, locking money into home equity eliminates flexibility. You can't reallocate that value until you refinance, borrow against it, or sell, each carrying its own costs and headaches. So, your capital sits idle at a subpar return precisely when you need it most. Worse still, retirees who overemphasize paying down a low-rate loan often neglect to build the cash reserves needed for emergencies, forcing them into high-cost borrowing later. The result is a double whammy: an underperforming asset allocation and reduced liquidity. Before you write the next mortgage check, run the numbers. Compare your loan rate to plausible investment yields, factor in taxes and fees, and calculate the net gain. You might find that paying off your house early feels good psychologically, but it actually costs you more in the long run, sacrificing higher returns and the freedom to reposition your capital where it works hardest for you. Market downturns can feel like distant memories when you're still decades away from retirement. But when you're living on a fixed income and still carrying a mortgage, a sharp market drop has a way of turning every quarterly dip into a personal crisis. Picture this. You plan to tap your investments sparingly, letting your nest egg grow, while making steady mortgage payments at a comfortable rate. Then, the market tumbles 15% in a few months, wiping out gains you expected to rely on for discretionary spending. Suddenly, that low-rate mortgage payment looms large, and you're forced to sell stocks at a loss just to cover the bills. A retiree in Arizona tells how she watched her portfolio lose $50,000 in 6 weeks, and because her mortgage payment still demanded the same cash each month, she had no choice but to liquidate shares at rock-bottom prices. Others recount the stress of deciding between skipping a vacation they'd booked or dipping into emergency reserves they'd earmarked for home repairs. The emotional sting runs deep. Every downturn becomes a tug-of-war between preserving capital and meeting obligations, eroding the sense of stability retirement is supposed to bring. And unlike your working years, when you could wait for a rebound, retiring with a mortgage means you might not have the luxury of time. Locking money into home equity doesn't help you when the market falls, it just limits your options. Refinancing to pause payments can come with fees and stricter qualification rules for retirees, and tapping home equity through a line of credit or reverse mortgage carries its own risks and interest charges. In essence, carrying a mortgage turns market volatility from an abstract chart into real-life anxiety, forcing you to juggle debt service and living expenses amid financial uncertainty. For many, the lesson is clear. Eliminating that fixed payment before you stop working not only frees up cash flow, but also shields you from the pulse of market swings, letting you ride out downturns in your investment accounts without the added pressure of a looming mortgage bill. Property taxes and homeowners insurance have a sneaky way of inflating just when your budget can't handle it, turning what felt like a comfortable payment into a moving target. In retirement, you expect stability. Fixed income, fixed housing costs, and the luxury of planning year to year. Instead, many retirees discover that local governments reassess property values every few years, often in line with booming markets or neighborhood improvements, and suddenly your tax bill spikes by 15, 20, even 30%. One couple in their mid-70s in California saw their annual tax go from $6,000 to over $9,000 after a single reassessment, with little warning and no chance to phase in the increase. Homeowners insurance follows a similar path. As claims rise for wildfires, hurricanes, or liability payouts, insurers jack up premiums mid-policy or refuse renewals unless you accept drastically higher rates. Retirees tell stories of opening an insurance bill only to find a 25% hike that pushes their monthly payment out of reach. When that happens, you can't just refinance to cover the extra cost. Insurance lenders often require proof of renovation or even a whole house inspection, and many retirees lack the cash cushion for sudden inspections or repair mandates. You end up cutting into discretionary spending, vacations, hobbies, medical extras, or tapping into investment accounts at inopportune times. Worse, if you miss a payment or let a policy lapse, you risk losing coverage entirely or being forced into a high-risk, high-cost insurer pool. All of this combines to turn your low-rate mortgage into a liability you can't escape. Even if your principal and interest stay the same, the total outlay can climb so sharply that you wonder if you should have just paid off the house before hanging up your work boots. Before you commit another year's worth of checks, factor in the unpredictability of taxes and insurance. Because in retirement, flexibility, not rigidity, is your greatest asset. Carrying a mortgage in retirement can leave you dangerously underfunded the moment life throws you a curveball, turning a supposedly modest monthly payment into an emergency bleeder that drains your cushion at the worst possible moment. When a roof springs a leak, a water heater goes out, or medical bills pile up, you need cash on hand, yet retirees with mortgage debt often find themselves short of liquid reserves precisely because they've funneled so much into home equity instead of maintaining an emergency fund. One couple in Florida, both in their late 60s, discovered this the hard way when their air conditioning unit failed during a record heat wave. With 3 months of mortgage payments already committed and only a few $100s in checking, they had no choice but to take out a high-interest personal loan at nearly 15% just to cover the $7,500 repair bill. Others we've spoken to describe tapping credit cards at even higher rates or dipping into their investment accounts during market downturns, only to lock in losses because they couldn't wait for the market to recover. And it's not just home repairs that tighten the squeeze. Unexpected healthcare expenses, helping grandkids cover school costs, or even a sudden property tax reassessment can all demand immediate payment. The irony is that the same low-rate mortgage you once celebrated now becomes a barrier to accessing funds without penalty Refinancing options evaporate when banks see a fixed income, and reverse mortgages carry steep fees and interest accrual that many retirees find unpalatable. In essence, the mortgage check you dutifully write each month is siphoning off the flexibility you need to react to life surprises, leaving you with fewer options and higher costs precisely when you can least afford them. Before you carry that debt into retirement, consider whether the peace of mind from being mortgage-free and having the liquidity to tackle emergencies without high-cost borrowing is worth more than the small interest savings you thought you gained. Many retirees cling to their mortgage because they believe that interest deduction is a gift from Uncle Sam, but after the 2017 tax overhaul and today's higher standard deduction, that benefit has all but vanished for most households. You might remember hearing about deducting mortgage interest up to $750,000 of principal, but that only applies if you itemize, meaning your total deductions must exceed the standard deduction, now $27,700 for married couples and $13,850 for singles in 2024. For decades, retirees' medical expenses, state taxes, and mortgage interest piled up to justify itemization. Now, between higher thresholds and caps on state and local taxes, many find they get zero extra write-off for their mortgage. One couple we spoke with expected a $5,000 refund thanks to their interest checks, only to learn that their itemized total was still below the standard deduction, so they walked away with nothing. Worse, that realization comes after a year of dutifully making payments and thinking they were saving on taxes, when in reality those dollars simply reduced their principal, offering no federal relief. And while state deductions vary, many retirees who moved to low-tax states still saw their total write-offs fall short of the standard. Worse yet, tapping other deductions, charitable gifts, medical expenses, casualty losses, to push itemization over the line often isn't enough or isn't allowed by timing rules. The result is a double disappointment. You've drained liquid assets or carried debt thinking you'd recoup it on your return, and you get no tax credit for the effort. Before you decide to keep that mortgage alive for another decade, run a side-by-side calculation of your itemized deductions versus the standard. Factor in any state-level benefits. You might find that paying off the loan not only frees you from the monthly check, but also saves you more in avoided interest costs than you'd ever reclaim on your tax return. In retirement, clarity is king, and the illusion of a mortgage deduction can cost you more than you ever imagined. Living with a mortgage payment long into retirement takes a psychological toll that often outweighs any financial rationale, whispering doubt into every decision and clouding what should be a time of calm. Imagine waking up each month knowing that no matter how well you stick to your budget, that mortgage check is non-negotiable, right behind essentials like groceries, utilities, and healthcare. For many retirees, that constant obligation becomes the first worry of the day and the last relief when a payment clears. Interviews reveal a common theme. The mere presence of debt, even low-rate debt, provokes a baseline level of stress, triggering sleepless nights and nagging anxiety about market swings, tax hikes, or unexpected repairs that could throw the budget off balance. The mental weight of ongoing payments can erode the enjoyment of retirement milestones. Vacations feel tainted by checklists of upcoming bills, family gatherings are shadowed by thoughts of missing a payment, and hobbies lose their sparkle when every dollar spent means less cash for housing. Worse yet, that anxiety often leads retirees to defer more pleasurable activities, convincing themselves they need to save just one more year before splurging on travel or grandkid visits. Over time, these small concessions compound into years of missed experiences and strained relationships, memories deferred until it's too late. A psychologist specializing in aging reports that retirees with mortgage debt exhibit higher rates of depression and lower confidence in their financial independence, a stark contrast to those who finish payments before or at retirement. They describe an ongoing tug-of-war between the logic of maintaining liquidity and the emotional relief of owning a home outright. In the end, the freedom you thought a mortgage offered by preserving cash can backfire, replacing one form of vulnerability, thin checking accounts, with another, pinging anxiety about debt. For many, calling the mortgage paid in full brings not just a zero balance on paper, but an immediate lift in mood, a sense of closure, and permission to truly savor the years ahead. That peace of mind isn't reflected in spreadsheets, but its value is undeniable. Arguably the greatest return a retiree can earn. Carrying a mortgage into retirement can feel like a savvy strategy, preserving your cash while locking in a historically low rate. But as we've uncovered, the hidden costs, risks, and stress often far outweigh the perceived benefits. Every dollar tied up in home equity is a dollar you can't deploy to higher yield investments or set aside for emergencies, and when markets dip, the pressure to sell at a loss or deplete reserves can turn a bear market into a personal crisis. Meanwhile, unpredictable spikes in property taxes and insurance premiums can balloon your monthly outlay without warning, and the narrow window for refinancing or tapping home equity makes liquidity a fantasy just when you need it most. The tax code's shift toward larger standard deductions has all but erased the mortgage interest benefit, leaving many retirees surprised that their payments no longer yield the federal relief they counted on. Beyond the numbers, the psychological weight of fixed housing debt presses on mental health, sapping enjoyment of what should be your most carefree years. Hobbies are postponed, vacations postponed, and every family gathering carries an undercurrent of fiscal anxiety until that last mortgage statement is filed away. At the end of the day, true retirement isn't about juggling debts, it's about freedom. Freedom to allocate your capital where it works hardest, to absorb life's surprises without panic, and to savor the moments you've earned. If you find yourself still sending that check every month, consider running the what-if scenario of paying down your loan. Calculate the extra returns you could capture elsewhere, the peace of mind you'd gain, and the memories you might begin making instead of worrying about interest. Because in retirement, the greatest return on investment isn't found in your portfolio, it's the liberation of being debt-free. Take that step, and you'll discover that the best payment you ever make isn't to a bank, it's to yourself.